Mochi, that chewy, squishy Japanese treat that TikTok turned into a worldwide obsession. But here's the twist. Mochi was around long before hashtags, influencers, or whatever aesthetic is trending this week.
I gave my brother rice cakes and mochi.
Back in the year 794, it wasn't all pastel colors and kawaii packaging. Nope, mochi was basically witch food. Offered up in Shinto rituals to keep the gods happy, bring fertility, and maybe stop your crops from dying. Cute, right? And forget clean girls, samurai were the original mochi stands. They packed it for war, chomped it down before battle, and used it as their power bar. Not exactly the fluffy vibe you see in those Instagram reels. But fine, enough history. Today, we're going to break down how this mystical chewy little ball is actually made, both the hardcore traditional way and the shiny factory process. Let's get into it. Preparing the filling. The process begins with the filling. Red beans are poured into a massive stainless steel steam jacketed kettle. This industrial kettle uses pressurized steam to heat evenly and efficiently, cooking hundreds of pounds at once. Once cooked, the beans are tipped into a hopper and fed into an extruder. The extruder is essentially a grinder with a continuous screw inside, pressing the beans forward and pushing them through small openings until a silky paste comes out the other side. A worker waits nearby, scooping up the rich, earthy paste, making sure no clumps are left stuck inside. The paste is transferred into tubs and hauled over to a planetary mixer. Here, the beans are enriched. Food-grade oil is added first to make the paste supple and prevent drying. Then comes a blend of white sugar and brown sugar, each bringing its own kind of sweetness. White sugar brings a clean, neutral sweetness and helps keep the paste smooth, while brown sugar adds depth from its molasses, giving it a richer caramel-like taste and a slightly darker color. Maltose syrup is poured in next, and this has a dual purpose. It not only sweetens, but also binds the paste, giving it elasticity and shine. Finally, powdered milk is mixed in, softening the flavor, adding creaminess, and balancing the earthy bite of the beans. The mixer churns until the paste is glossy and smooth. Traditionally, this filling would have been prepared by hand in small batches, with families stirring beans over fire and carefully folding in sugar. In factories today, mixers do the muscle work, but the recipe remains faithful. Once ready, the filling is portioned into neat batches, each destined for the heart of a daifuku. Preparing the outer layer. But mochi is defined not just by its filling, but by its outer layer, the glutinous rice dough. This rice, called mochi-gom, is what gives mochi its signature chewy bite. In the old days, families and communities would soak the rice, steam it, and then pound it in a ceremony called mochitsuki. Two people would work in rhythm, one turning the rice, the other bringing down a heavy wooden mallet again and again until the grains fused into an elastic dough. It was noisy, communal, and festive, a New Year's tradition that symbolized strength, unity, and good fortune. Here in the factory, mochitsuki has been replaced by machines, but the transformation is essentially the same. The rice is washed and poured into a wet milling machine. Inside, water softens the grains while grinding plates break them down into a fine slurry, almost like rice milk. This replaces the early pounding stages of mochitsuki. The slurry is then transferred into a rotary steam kneader. This machine continuously stirs while injecting steam, gelatinizing the starches in the rice until it thickens into a creamy, sticky mass. What once required pounding with mallets is now achieved with heat and steel paddles. But the principle is unchanged. Rice transformed into dough by force and patience. The warm dough is poured into another industrial mixer. Meanwhile, maltose syrup is boiled separately in a stainless kettle until it becomes thick and glossy. Workers pour it into the rice base, ensuring the dough develops the chewy, springy texture that makes mochi so distinctive. Plastic sheets line the containers where the dough is left to set. Not for show, but to keep the sticky mass from clinging to metal and to make removal easier later. As it cools, it firms into something that finally resembles dough. When ready, the dough is extruded into neat rounds. On one side of the factory, the machines prepare red bean filling. On the other, they shape rice dough. Now it's time for them to meet. Forming the mochi. An automatic wrapping machine takes over the delicate job once done by hand. On one end, it feeds discs of rice dough. On the other, dollops of sweet bean paste. With uncanny precision, the machine folds the dough over the filling and seals it into perfect spheres. Daifuku in its modern form. The balls roll down a conveyor, where workers dust each one by hand with rice flour or cornstarch to keep them from sticking. Variations. But red bean daifuku isn't the only variety made here. On another line, the same process is followed, but the filling is ground peanuts mixed with sugar and oil, producing peanut mochi. In Japan, countless regional variations exist. Sakura mochi, kusa mochi, and even mochi ice cream, all cousins of the daifuku being made here. There's also a handmade line. The difference is subtle but important. Instead of the automatic machine wrapping the dough and filling, workers perform the task themselves, shaping each mochi by hand just as their ancestors did centuries ago. It's slower and more labor-intensive, but the care and craftsmanship are unmistakable. Drying. Once formed, the mochi are left to dry in carefully controlled conditions. Humidity must be just right. Too much and the mochi grows sticky and spoils. Too little and it hardens. Workers monitor the trays closely, ensuring consistency. Packaging. Finally, the mochi is packaged. Each piece is set into a delicate baking cup, 9 to a tray, wrapped, sealed, and boxed. From here, they'll be shipped out to shops, ready to be enjoyed. Mochi has traveled a long way to reach this point. Its story begins in Japan's Jomon period, as early as 14,000 BCE, when rice first became part of daily life. By the Nara period, mochi had taken a form closer to what we know today. In the Heian era, it was reserved for nobles, a luxury enjoyed at courtly gatherings. During the Edo period, it spread widely, becoming a food for common people, offered at festivals, weddings, and especially the New Year. Mochi became not just a snack, but a symbol of prosperity, of unity, of life itself. When mochi first appeared in the West, it was called Japanese rice cake. But the word mochi has since entered English in its own right, just like sushi or sake. Daifuku, with its sweet red bean heart, is now one of the most popular versions outside Japan. And though we may buy it neatly boxed in supermarkets, its roots stretch back to families pounding rice in wooden mortars, surrounded by laughter, ritual, and hope for the year ahead.